to talk about a different subject than what I've been talking about for the past couple of weeks. We're going to talk about all the new contracts that are coming into effect in Dynasty Owner this coming season. Yes, we're going to talk about the new contracts for the 2021 Dynasty Owner season. A little different than what I've been doing the past few weeks when I've been trying to get you ready for your Dynasty Owner startup. But with the 2021 Dynasty Owner season kicking in officially on Thursday, it's time to, we've got a lot of new contracts. There's been a lot of updates, a lot of tones coming out of your phone, and a lot of emails telling you about contract updates. And so to make sense of all of it, I thought I would put it all together in one spot because it's easy for everybody to keep track of their own team and their own salaries. But you've got to keep track of everybody else's too, because you need to know what other teams are going to be thinking, what they might need to be getting, who they might be needing to trade or even drop. And so you need to balance your cap and your needs and your team with the other teams so that you can make good trades for yourself and make some key free agent auction pickups. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about contracts. And we're not just going to talk about the contracts that have been signed in free agency, which started on Monday, but we're going to talk about the contracts which may have predated those by a few days, the ones from Dak Prescott and Aaron Jones, for example, that came just before free agency. And then you've got contracts that occurred during the season that you may have forgotten about. There were a couple of guys who signed new contracts during the season, and those didn't take effect for the 2020 season, but they take effect for the 2021 season. And then we go even further back to like July and early September, when a lot of big name players like Patrick Mahomes, Alvin Kamara, Dalvin Cook, Joe Mixon, Derrick Henry, Christian McCaffrey, they all signed new contracts, but those didn't take effect for the 2020 Dynasty Owner season, even though they were signed before the NFL season started. They take effect for this coming 2021 Dynasty Owner season. So there's a lot of contracts to break down. That's why you've been getting a lot of notifications. That's why the devs have been working overtime, and Tim's been working late at night, making sure that everything's ready to go for the start of the 2021 Dynasty Owner season. So with that, we're going to talk about some of these contracts that are coming due for the 2021 Dynasty Owner season. As you can see, we've got a little thing here that we're going to do, and we're going to talk about those. We're going to talk about those contracts. So the first set of contracts we've got the $12.5 million tight ends. And those basically, I could have put, the title could have been $12.5 million tight ends who are going to play for the New England Patriots this year, but that was a little tough to fit on the slide. So I just went with $12.5 million tight ends. The Patriots have two of them now. They've got Jonnu Smith, formerly of the Tennessee Titans, and they've got Hunter Henry, formerly of the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, Smith is the one who, in Dynasty Owner, is going to make a bigger impact on your salary cap than Henry, because Smith last year only made just under $800,000, and now he's going to be making $12.5 million. So that's a difference of $11.5 million that you're going to need to fit under the new salary cap. The new salary cap went up, and it went up by $15.75 million. But if you've got Jonnu Smith on your roster, he's going to take up almost all of that and all of that increase. So you're going to have to find other players to get rid of, or maybe get rid of Smith, depending on what you can do under your salary cap. And while Hunter Henry's getting the same $12.5 million from the Patriots as Jonnu Smith, his contract is 1 year less, which is good news for Dynasty owners. But also, he was making a little over $10.6 million last year. So you've only got to find $1.9 million in extra salary cap room if you want to fit Hunter Henry under on your team this coming Dynasty owner season. Next, we're going to talk about some $10 million wide receivers. These are guys who are going to be making over $10 million a year next year. And we could have had a few more of them on here. We could have put Nelson Aguilar on here, but he's another Patriot, so we don't want to talk just about the Patriots. So we're going to talk about Corey Davis and Curtis Samuel, both of whom are switching teams. Corey Davis is going also from Tennessee, just like his former teammate Jonnu Smith, but he's going to the New York Jets. And the Jets are paying him $12.5 million a year for 3 years. So his salary is increasing from about the $6 million he made before. It's about doubling to $12.5 million a year. Curtis Samuel, on the other hand, is moving from Carolina to the Washington football team. He's being reunited with Coach Ron Rivera in Washington. And interestingly, he's going to be paid $9.5 million a year. But while I think Davis is probably going to be assumed to be the number one wide receiver in New York, Curtis Samuel is probably not going to be the number one wide receiver in Washington because of the presence of Terry McLaurin. So you've got Samuel moving to Washington, and who's going to be throwing him the ball in Washington? If you've been paying attention, you know the answer to that question is one of our $10 million quarterbacks here. And right on the bottom, it's Mr. Beard, Ryan Fitzpatrick. Him and Andy Dalton both signed new $10 million deals, both of them to supposedly start for their teams. Dalton pretty much said as much in his introductory press conference that he was told he was going to be the starter, which is why he signed with them. And Fitzpatrick probably is going to be the starter. I mean, the football team's got Kyle Allen still around, and they've got Taylor Heineke, who played for them in the playoffs last year. But the expectation is that Fitzpatrick is going to be the starter, and he's got a new weapon in Curtis Samuel, a guy we talked about earlier. For dynasty owner purposes, though, you're getting Fitzpatrick and Dalton are both going to be making more than they were last year, but both of them are in theory going to be the starter and hopefully all year. And if you can get a $10 million, starting quarterback on your dynasty owner team for $10 million, you're doing a good job. So I think that they'll be both very highly owned. Right now, they're about 86% owned. I think that'll probably go up to 100% for both of them. Just because teams are going to need quarterbacks. They may not be your starter, but they'd be a good bench option for you, or a bye week replacement, or if somebody gets hurt. So, but both veterans quarterbacks are going to be making $10 million a year on towards your dynasty owner salary. But the good news is, since they're on the older side, they're both only on 1 year deals, so you only have to pay that for 1 year. Next, we're going to talk about some running backs. And interestingly, these are two running backs who actually took salary cuts. One, David Johnson, took a salary cut from the Houston Texans to stay in Houston. Last year, he was making $13 million, and now this coming year, he's only going to be making $5 million a year. So everybody who hung on to Johnson last year and didn't get rid of him at the end of the season, you're going to get yourself an $8 million a year savings. And you might get the same production as last year, which would be pretty great for the U. I mean, he was injured for a couple of games, but he's produced at a pretty high level there. And for $5 million a year, that's a lot better than $13 million a year. And the second running back, I know it's his free agent here, but Kenyon Drake did sign with the Las Vegas Raiders. And he signed a 2-year, $11 million contract. So he'll be making $5.5 million for the next 2 years. Last year, he played for Arizona under the transition tag, and he made almost $8.5 million a year. So if you kept Drake, you're probably going to save about $3 million in salary cap this year. That's the good news on Drake. The bad news is that Las Vegas still has Josh Jacobs there to be the starting running back. So it's a little curious why they paid a lot of money to Drake to come in. Hopefully John Gruden's got a plan for that. And if you've got Kenyon Drake on your team, hopefully you've got a plan for possibly not using him as one of your starters. Hopefully you've got somebody and you can slide Drake onto your bench. And at least you're going to save $3 million in salary on that. And last but not least, we're going to talk about our favorite position, kickers. And here we're highlighting a couple of expensive kickers. Now, some kickers have been re-signing, some for a little bit of a salary increase, some for a decrease. But these two guys are getting big increases. Graham Gano, he actually signed his contract back in November with the New York Giants. Probably didn't realize this unless you had Gano on your roster and were paying hyper attention to everything. But he signed a 3-year, $14 million contract back in November to stay on as the New York Giants kicker. And that's going to make him the second most expensive kicker right now in Dynasty, behind only Justin Tucker, who makes $5 million a year. That's a lot for Graham Gano. That's over $3.5 million more than you paid if you had him on your roster last year. And similarly, you've got Ryan Suckup from the Super Bowl champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Last year, he made just over $1 million. And now in 2021, he's going to make $4 million a year as he signed a brand new 3-year, $12 million contract. hopefully he earns that money. That's a lot of money for a kicker, both kickers. So if you've got those guys on your dynasty owner roster, you might want to think about a cheaper option if you can find it out there. So that's it. Those are some of the players. That's not everybody who is signed. I mean, there's so many more players. We spent time talking about them on the live podcast, and we will again today on Friday. But those are just some of the new contracts that we have for the 2021 Dynasty Owner season. Chet, we'll have more. Some guys still haven't signed. You got Juju Smith-Schuster, Kenny Golladay, Chris Carson. None of those guys have signed yet. So we'll probably have more contract updates to talk about next week if those guys sign over the weekend or early next week. But hopefully you've enjoyed this video. If so, please like it. Read the accompanying article about which has a lot more players who have signed contracts. We talk very little detail about a lot of players there, so you can keep track of all those guys in case you haven't been paying attention to everybody who signed a new contract since the last Dynasty Owner year kicked in. Please remember to, in addition to liking my video and reading my article, please make sure to like the videos, watch the videos, and read the articles for the other Dynasty Owner writers. Nate Christian, who's talking about rookies on Mondays. Matt the Jerk, who talks about contracts and salaries for individual teams every Wednesday. And Jay Pounds, who talks about how to rebuild your Dynasty Owner team on Thursdays. Make sure to follow all of us and Dynasty_owner on Twitter, and watch hopefully if you're seeing this, maybe go back and watch the live streams that we've been doing for the past couple of days. They've been great. They've been a lot of fun, and we're going to have a lot more of them over the course of the year, getting you ready for the 2021 Dynasty Owner season. Thanks a lot. Have a great day, everybody. Bye.